Terraria has many boss fights, and of course some of them are great, while others are either underwhelming or straight up poorly designed. So today we're going to be taking a trip through what I believe to be the 3 best boss fights in Terraria, and the 3 worst boss fights in Terraria as well. Let's start off with one of the best boss fights in the whole game, Duke Fishron. This battle is honestly on the less complicated side of Terraria boss fights, but it is super fun nonetheless. This is one of those enemies that seems impossible at first, but becomes much easier and easier as you learn it. Most new players will get destroyed by Duke Fishron, while most veterans can dodge all of his attacks with ease. Even someone like myself with hundreds of hours in the game can still struggle with this boss fight after a while. Trying to fight him in master mode or with pre-planned Terra gear is basically a death sentence for most players. What really makes this boss fight good though isn't just the difficulty. Like I said earlier, it has a really simple yet satisfying attack pattern, and Duke Fishron also has some of the best boss loot in the entire game, like the Tsunami, the Razor Blade Typhoon, and a few others. It is really cool that you're able to fight this boss fight at any stage in hard mode, so if you're good enough at the game, you can beat Duke Fishron and breeze through the rest of the game with his gear alone. Overall, a simple, fun, and rewarding boss. One of the worst boss fights, on the other hand, is King Slime. What makes this boss fight bad isn't really the gameplay. I mean, yeah, King Slime is super underwhelming and easy to fight, but there are plenty of those in Terraria. What makes King Slime stand out so much is really his terrible loot. This boss fight literally doesn't drop anything worth getting in most playthroughs. The slime saddle is a pretty neat mount, and the slime hook is okay if you have no other grappling hooks, but there is no reason for somebody to go out of their way to fight this thing. Even though he's the first boss fight in the entire game, he feels more like a mini boss than anything. I skip him in most of my playthroughs simply because there's nothing to get out of him when it comes to his loot, and his gameplay is not nearly fun or interesting enough to make up for it. And that's that. Another one of the best boss fights in Terraria though is the Twins. I think this is undoubtedly the most fun mechanical boss in the entire game. The Destroyer is forgettable, Skeletron Prime is just okay, but the Twins are an absolutely phenomenal boss fight. It's everything you could ask for out of a double battle. One enemy focused on firing fast, long-ranged projectiles, and the other one focused on dealing massive amounts of damage at a short distance. The only thing worth criticizing this boss for is that Spasmatism's first phase is sort of similar to Retinazer's in terms of gameplay, really focusing on firing off projectiles, but that's really nitpicky, and it doesn't matter at all. I love the design of this boss fight so much. Taking the original Eye of Cthulhu and then adding 2 new enemies that look similar but with different colored eyes to symbolize their attacks was a fantastic idea. This is one of the most dynamic boss fights in the entire game by far when it comes to the gameplay, and the drops are pretty good as well. I would honestly say that the Souls of Sight are the worst of the mechanical soul drops, but not by much. The loot you obtain from the Twins is still more than necessary for a lot of playthroughs. My personal favorite boss fight in the entire game. There is one that I think is objectively better in most ways, which I'll be talking about later, but the Twins are definitely up there. Another one of the worst boss fights in Terraria, however, is the Lunatic Cultists. This is in a very similar situation to King Slime. The battle itself isn't great, but it's not bad either. The real problem is the loot. The Lunatic Cultists only drop one item, the Ancient Manipulator. It's an essential item for crafting weapons to take on Moonlord, but it's not interesting at all. If you could craft weapons like the Daybreak with a Mithril Anvil instead of the Ancient Manipulator, for example, nothing about the game would fundamentally change. It's just an extra step for the sake of giving the Lunatic Cultists a boss drop, which it doesn't really need. The fight itself is also pretty mediocre. Not only is it really easy for when it takes place, but it's also very spammy and annoying at the same time. The constant meaningless projectiles and animations where you can't attack the boss itself feels like a big waste of time. It's very underwhelming when you compare it to something like Moonlord, which you fight only half an hour later or so. Not a horrible boss fight, but definitely one of the worst. The best boss fight in all of Terraria is 100% the Empress of Light. This boss fight has the most variety when it comes to attacks. One second you're dodging these crazy projectiles, then you're avoiding getting hit by her Sundance, and now you're avoiding her dash attacks. It is a constant barrage of fun and interesting moves. Like Duke Fishron, this boss fight will be a nightmare on the first attempt, but as the player learns by fighting the Empress of Light more often, the attack patterns become a lot more obvious. This is also the most visually impressive boss fight in the game by far. The bright neon colors mixed with the pitch black background is beautiful. My favorite thing about the Empress of Light though is definitely her loot, specifically the Terra Prisma. Even though it's not an essential weapon for progression with the Summoner class at all, I love the challenge of beating the Empress of Light hit list to obtain such a cool looking weapon. It's no surprise that this is the most popular boss fight in the game, or at least one of the most appreciated. The music, the visuals, the moveset, the drops, it's all fantastic. There's also a much weirder reason that people like this boss fight. But we're not doing this. And finally, what I believe to be the worst boss fight in the entire game is, of course, Golem. It's Golem. Everything needed to be said about this boss fight has kind of already been said. The big problem is simply that Golem is fought near the end of the game, and yet he's one of the most simple and easy boss fights in the entire experience. This guy has received nothing but buffs for years, and yet he is still considered a walk in the park nonetheless. In all fairness to Terraria, after going back to 1.2, it is clear that they have done the best job they can at making Golem a real threat nowadays. The issue is that Golem's attacks are just inherently easy. A couple lasers here and there are a few bouncing projectiles. It's so simple and easy to avoid. The only time you're going to struggle with this boss is if you get cursed with a really small arena, although that's not really gonna happen to you in most playthroughs. I've tried giving Golem some credit here and there, but I would be lying if I said that this was a good boss fight or even anything close. And there you have it. Those are the 3 worst and the 3 best boss fights in Terraria. What's really cool is that even the worst boss fights in Terraria aren't really that bad at all. They have a few problems here and there, but they don't make the experience any worse. Well, aside from Golem.